welcome everyone. My name is Yvine. We are from the Religious for Peace UK, and we are really happy to see so many people here interested in this webinar, Nurturing Interfaith and Intercultural Understanding in Children. This is the second webinar of the web series Navigating a Changing World, dedicated to parents, grandparents, educators, and really everyone who is involved or interested in child development and in fostering empathy, understanding, and well, values for a more peaceful society for us all. So to discuss this important topic, I'm really thrilled to introduce our speakers who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, to this discussion. So I'll start in order as they will speak. First, we have Frances Hume, the National Development Officer at Interfaith Scotland. She has been really instrumental in driving initiatives that promote dialogue and understanding among diverse communities. And yeah, her dedication to the cause is very inspiring. So Frances, we're very grateful for you to have you here tonight, this evening, to share your experience and insights in leading children and youth in this peaceful path. Thank you very much. And we also have Dr. Maureen Sier, a theologian and director of Interfaith Scotland. She has expertise in fostering understanding across different faiths and cultures, and her insights will certainly enrich our discussions and provide a valuable perspectives on nurturing children and intercultural understanding. She will also share her experience as a mother and grandmother and also a community leader. So please welcome both. Welcome to all participants. And there will be more time later for you to also share your insights or ask questions after the presentation. So let's all enjoy and learn more about this topic this evening. So now I will hand over to Frances. Yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
We're going for two parts here. In the first section, I'm going to be looking a little bit about spirituality and children and young people. And then I'm going to be talking in a little bit more depth about the work that we do at Interfaith Scotland in terms of interfaith and intercultural education and understanding, before we turn to Maureen, who's going to talk from a practical point of view within her own family and faith background as well. So the first question, we do training with primary school teachers and nursery school teachers, and in that training we ask them, what do they think spirituality is, and what do they think a spiritual experience might look like? And the reason we do this is in a way to demystify what being spiritual or religious means. A lot of people say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, which might mean they don't belong to a religious tradition or they don't attend a place of worship, but they might still have a belief in God or spirit or a sense that there's meaning and purpose in life, or have an incident which is out of the ordinary. So it's a way of getting people to think about how this could be actually a part of our life, a part of everybody's life, and not just people who might seem to be different or do things that are different to us. And so once I've asked them to look at what spirituality is, I have a slide on the screen which I share from the Royal College of Psychiatrists Special Interest Group on Spirituality. And that says that being spiritual is part of what it means to be human. So it means experiencing a deep-seated sense of meaning and purpose in life, together with a sense of belonging. It is about acceptance, integration, and wholeness. For the spiritual dimension tries to be in harmony with the universe, strives for answers about the infinite, and comes especially into focus in times of emotional stress, physical and mental illness, loss, bereavement, and death. The desire for wholeness of being lies in the essence of what it means to be human. So within that, the idea that everyone can say that they may have some kind of spiritual longing or knowledge or just part of who we are as human beings. And so when I asked them about what a spiritual experience might be, so a spiritual experience could be a sense of awe and wonder in nature, a feeling of warm connection towards others that takes you beyond yourself, an encounter with something beyond what we can see, whether it's God or angels, or sometimes people say they've seen people who died. It could be through prayer, speaking to God, or meditation through listening, or feeling that God had spoken to you or someone who died. Seeing a significance in everyday events such as rainbows or finding a white feather, or remembering even a past life or a sense that you came from another world. And I've seen a number of videos of young children talking about how they've lived in a previous life, which can be very interesting. So how might children respond to spiritual experiences or questions? Well, they might wonder about why something has happened, something sad, for example, why God might not answer their prayer for help, thinking about life and death and where we go when we die, asking where is God, asking which religion is true, which of course can be very difficult if you're a teacher. Do you give your point of view or do you just say, so often when we ask the teachers that, they say, well, they can say what they think, but they also ask the children, first of all, what do you think? And then if the child really wants to know what they think, then they can say it, but obviously not in a way that sounds as if that's a definitive truth, but it's what they believe. They might feel afraid or confused if they think they've encountered some kind of spiritual being. They might have spoken to someone they think who had died, or they might be frustrated because they want to be believed if their experiences are dismissed. So through the training that we do with nursery school teachers, as I've mentioned, we try and explain about spirituality being a natural part of life. And also looking at different religions and how we explain that is as one tree with many branches. So faith can be expressed in diverse ways through different cultures. Could be through dress, sometimes it's religious dress, and sometimes that comes out of the cultural context, such as wearing a headscarf. It could be different types of food, and again, sometimes the food is religious and sometimes it's from that culture, and different festivals. So they showcase the diversity of different faiths and cultures, but also we have the similarities across different faiths, such as prayer or meditation, places of worship, and festivals. And we have a game that we call the religious objects game. And in that game, we have 6 objects, and each one's from a different religion. And we have 6 boxes, so that's 36 objects in total. And within that, we get them to guess which one goes with which religion. And some of them show how different the objects are and unusual to some of them. But at the same time, it shows the things that we have in common. So for example, we've got prayer beads in 3 of the boxes, and one is Muslim, one is Sikh, and one is Catholic. And so they can say that although maybe there's different words that you pray, you're using a similar object and praying in a similar way, like repetitive prayer, for example. So that's our training with nursery school teachers. And we also have a schools programme called Faces of Faith. And in our schools programme, we share the importance of interfaith and why it's important in terms of understanding and respecting others and overcoming some of the negative stereotypes that people might see about different religions in the media. We bring in people from different faiths, often young people. Felix is here this evening. He's been into schools with me. And that's a way of sharing in a very human way about that person's faith, maybe the country they're from, their background, and what it means to them personally. We can all read about religions in books or watch videos. something on the internet, but being able to have that interaction where you see a person as an approachable and normal human being can be very powerful, and a chance to ask questions as well. So I personally believe that personal engagement and encounter is so important. And I always quote from one school where we were in when we did the evaluations, and one of the pupils had put in the evaluation, "I never realized that religious people were normal." So it gave me a bit of a laugh, but again I thought we've got a bit of a way to go here. So yes, just demystifying and normalizing faiths and culture so that people don't feel afraid or intimidated to ask, and just so they feel free to ask and just be normal. Another thing that we do, which I recommend, is we bring in religious objects. So we have like hijabs, so Muslim headscarves. We have kippas, which are the Jewish skull cap. So we give the boys and girls an opportunity to try these on. And again, it's a way of showing this is just a piece of material, a piece of cloth. There's an organization called Amana, that's a Muslim organization that does educational work in schools. And they say that the kids are quite shocked when they say, "Oh, where'd you get your headscarf?" And they say, "Oh, we got it in Primark." They're like, oh, it's just a piece of cloth. It's not like some kind of magical piece of material. So again, it's trying on things so that it just feels like normal to them. And also playing instruments, like, so we're bringing in singing bowls and bells from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So that kind of kinesthetic learning that makes it real and alive. Now, I had lots of online resources and videos to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send those through to Evine, so you'll see all the links there. Some of the links include to religious objects and artifacts which you can buy, so things to wear, things to try on, things to play, to books like Interfaith books. There's one called Hats of Faith, which has pictures. It's like a storybook for very young children with pictures of different people from different religions with different head coverings. We have resources on both our Interfaith Scotland and Scottish Interfaith Week website. We've just produced a new resource with Education Scotland. I don't think it's online yet, but that's looking at supporting and understanding the needs of different religions and cultures. So that looks at things like dietary needs, supporting people who are fasting, festivals, religious clothing, physical contact, things like some people don't like to shake hands or hug and some people do. So it's about asking questions and making sure people feel comfortable, and also understanding why people do the things they do. We had an interfaith dialogue event earlier in the day, and we had a Hindu lady who was talking about how you take your shoes off when you go into the temple, and she said, it's a very practical scientific thing that we don't want to get the floor dirty. So again, it's like how to make things just very simple and make sense to children, rather than going, "Oh, that's a strange thing, we don't do that," but this is why people do that and what they do, and then it makes sense and it's interesting for them. The other thing is we've got quite a lot of videos. I'll just make a shout out to the Edinburgh Interfaith Association, who created a lovely video called Faith and I, following the life story of 3 young girls in Edinburgh talking about their faith, and this is available on YouTube. And I've also made a link to quite a few BBC videos for children and of all different levels, like young children and teenagers. Some of them are from other young people talking about their faith, and some are stories from the different faiths as well. So there's loads, I suppose my take-home message is there's loads out there, and I'll share all those links with Evine later. And we look forward to your questions. But very happy now to pass over to Maureen for the next section.
I think it's quite good that you share the resources and then we can study them more closely. Thank you very much. So yeah, now Maureen is with you.
First of all, hi, it's really lovely to be here, and I'm delighted to be following on from my colleague Frances. In Interfaith Scotland, we find that the education of children is actually so central to interfaith work, because we're really talking about the next generation. And how do we develop, as Zavine was saying, empathy, respect, understanding, and just demystify and remove fear from children. But actually, what you do find with children is they're much more curious and less fearful than adults. They just love experiential things. They love to engage. They really, enjoy learning about different religions, different cultures. So I wouldn't feel shy or inhibited about sharing religious and spiritual and belief ideas with children. I think it's really important. But my task tonight is to speak from a much more personal point of view. As I'm a parent to 4 children and grandparent to 7 children, and my religion, my personal religion, is a Baha'i. So I thought I might just talk a little bit about, as parents or as people who are not working professionally in interfaith, because I mean, let's face it, people working professionally in interfaith are probably quite thin on the ground. So I'm hoping that I'm also talking to people who just are engaged with children, that love children, that either have their own children or are interested in just exploring some ways of even just engaging children in conversations about intercultural and interreligious difference, and how do we live in this world? Because there's one definite truth that I can share with all of you, and that is that we live in a multi-faith, multicultural world. So helping children to navigate that world just in the way that we have to learn to navigate it is such a beautiful thing to do. It really is a great thing to do. So I'm going to share a little bit of my context because that's how I like to weave things in. And I was born in the northeast of Scotland, considerably longer time ago than many of you. So in the late 1950s and early 1960s, growing up in a place called Elgin, the chances of bumping into someone from a different culture or a different religion were practically zero. So there really wasn't, and any experience of other cultures was via black and white tellies, and then it was really not the greatest way that other cultures and other religions were portrayed. So you, in a way, for the first probably 15, 16 years of my life, it was very insular. There was very little understanding of cultural difference or religious difference. My father worked abroad, and he worked in Africa as an overhead linesman. We were a very working class family. There wasn't even discussion in the home about cultural or religious difference. But I was aware that my father worked in a culture that wasn't the northeast of Scotland culture. Those days, actually, most of the language about culture from it really was racist. I mean, I'm just calling it out. Actually, the way that people spoke about people from other religions and other cultures were really just. So I grew up in that context. I mean, children do inhabit a particular context, and every child that you meet will inhabit almost a different world. That world of the family is their real experience. And so the very first thing I would say to anyone here who's a parent or a grandparent or an auntie or an uncle, and you want to engage people in your children, the children that you engage with in intercultural, interfaith, or in interreligious experiences, is walk the talk. You cannot expect children to have an understanding or an empathy or respect for other faiths or traditions or other cultures if you don't. So the very first thing I'd say when you're in that environment with children is walk the talk. I had no empathy for other cultures because I didn't even really much and such know that they existed. Anything that I did understand would have been from my father, who spoke in very racist language. And we did go to Sunday school, which was probably the most positive experience of in a way, other cultures, but it was always, we're going to help the poor Africans, or we're going to help the poor people that have a famine. There was no understanding of their own context, their own experience, although there was a lot of kindness, in the way that people would have been thinking about the other, whatever the other might have been. So then in my teens, I did start to question all of this. And at 17, I became a Baha'i, which was, I mean, now it doesn't feel at all radical, but in the northeast of Scotland, in Elgin, in a place where there wasn't diversity particularly, embracing a world religion, a religion that says that it's, you know, whether that all we are one human family and that all the major religions are from the same source, that whatever your if you like, your nationality, your ethnicity, all of that, you're loved by God and it's one human race. This was very, very central, that it's, you know, the oneness of religion, the oneness of God, and the oneness of humanity. So that was big for me. And I was a very, you know, it's like a huge explosion in my head that, you know, from what was around me to, wow, you know, now I need to understand in some way what this actually means to be, you know, engaged in a world that isn't just Elgin, that isn't just the northeast of Scotland. And actually, I'm grateful to say that the Baha'i community experience, I moved to Aberdeen young at 17 and married young. And I had 4 children by the time I was 26, because this is about children, it's not my journey. So I want to get to the bit about children. So what do you do as a parent? You've got 4 children. You are a member of, I'm a member of the Baha'i community. There was very few Baha'is really around. I was still living in the northeast of Scotland, where there wasn't a huge amount of diversity. And although I had an understanding of the diversity of cultures, there was not a huge exposure to different cultures and different religions. You know, there was the Baha'i community, and there was the wider farming community where lived in the northeast of Scotland. So and also we were a new religion. So how do you, you know, fairly new. So how do you instill a sense of your religious identity in your children when there isn't very many of you around? And also that as well as I love and I respect for their own faith or their family's faith tradition, you know, reaching out to others. And I mean, I'll give one little example. I mean, we were young, we were in our 20s, and we were just trying to get this kind of thing right with the children. So we had, for a Baha'i Holy Day, you know, our Baha'i New Year, we used to have what we called a Holy Day breakfast. So we'd start the day with sort of a religious context of some sort, sharing prayers and things like that. And then our Holy Day breakfast, what we said to the children was, this is a world faith. There'll be Baha'is and others all over the world having breakfast today. You choose any country in the world that you would like to learn a little bit more about, and we will have what they would have for breakfast. And it was a way of the kids really engaging in a fun way, you know, so they would go, oh, you know, can we have an American breakfast? So we, you know, there was no internet in those days. So they had to, you know, a couple of weeks beforehand, they had to think, what do Americans eat? And, you know, and we might have been having pancakes and maple syrup and all. So I had to also prepare. And then we had a Greek breakfast and we had, you know, we've had all kinds of breakfasts over the years. But with each of those experiences, they'd be excited about the holy day that was coming up. But we would be introducing in that context also, you know, a sense of the oneness of humanity, that, you know, that we live in this multi-faith, multicultural world. We'd also then travel with the children, not far, but from the northeast of Scotland to Aberdeen. And at that time, the oil industry was taken up in Aberdeen, and some of the Baha'is in Aberdeen were from very different cultures. So there was the Iranian diaspora. At that time, there's a lot of persecution of Baha'is in Iran, still is. And so there was many Iranians, and so the children would be learning about the Iranian culture, the Iranian food, the Iranian way of doing things. One of my daughter's best friends, well, 2 of my daughter's best friends are Egyptian. There was Egyptian Baha'is who'd come because of the oil in Aberdeen, learning about them. So that sort of introducing your children to people from other cultures and having friends yourselves that are people from other cultures is a wonderful way of just normalizing that sense of, you know, of this amazingly diverse world that we live in. And that was, you know, that was very, very meaningful. Introducing them to people from other religions and again in the northeast of Scotland was quite a challenge. It was very easy for them to have Christian friends, and you know they were the unusual ones, and that our children were, and that they were Baha'is. But there were at that time not very many that I knew of anyway, Buddhists or Hindus or Sikhs or Muslims or others in the northeast of Scotland. But we did do, I suppose, a reasonably radical thing when they were young teenagers. Well, the youngest, our son was 10, and our son was 10, our daughter was 12, and our older daughter was 15. We went and lived on the Pacific island of Samoa for a number of years. So they got an absolute immersion in a culture that was not their own. And that was really quite wonderful. But I recognise that most people don't get to have that experience with their children. So what I would say in terms of the most critical thing I would say to anyone who's engaging with children is, first of all, walk the talk. In your home, never speak disrespectfully about another religion, never speak disrespectfully about another belief system. You know, engage, you know, engender in yourself a real sense of curiosity about others. You know, when something crops up that seems really unusual, and rather than just dismissing it, sort of engage in that within yourself, that curiosity, so that when your kids are asking you, to say, I'm curious about that as well. Shall we find out why they do X or why they do Y? You know, it's just that openness and respect that if you don't have it, it will be very tough for your kids to have it. You know, I think it's just a critical thing that you walk it. So that was, then we learnt in our own family that turns out that my husband's mother, who we'd never met because she died when he was young, had been on the Kindertransport. She turned out to be Jewish, and that my husband's grandmother was murdered in the Minsk ghetto. So introducing the children to a complex history was also good. So within your context, all of you here on the screen, you may also have some real diversity that you will unexpectedly find within your own family, and that to take the time also to share that with your children or your grandchildren or your nieces or your nephews, or in a school context if you're an educator. So that sense of history and that sense of, in the wider world as well, that, so if you like, evolution of humanity, you know, the fact that we've all played our part in creating either our family history or the history of the human race, and that can be really interesting, really good. And then, you know, when you have a faith tradition of your own, it's natural as a parent to want your children to, because you've had a lot of joy from it. You think this will be the best thing in the world for my kids. But to be open to their questioning and not to be, I found that was really interesting. I remember the first experience of that was my oldest daughter, Sonia, when she was probably coming up for about 13. And she sat earnestly across the table from me one day and she said, "Mum, what if it's all just not true? You know, what if the Baha'i faith is just not true?" And, you know, it was genuine from her to me. And I thought, you know, you have to take a breath and think, it'd be so easy to go, of course it's true, you know, da, 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 da. And then I thought, no. So I said to her, you know, I think then it's up to you to find out, love, you know, to really look hard, to think a lot, to read a lot, to ask a lot of questions, and then decide for yourself if it's true. And I'd say, Mummy thinks it is, but this is your journey too. So not being panicked in that way around children, you know. And it's interesting because that does crop up quite a bit. I've noticed, like, one of my grandchildren, Jasmine, you know, the saying prayer, she said, "I'm just not sure about this prayer thing, Granny. I mean, who's listening?" You know, and can you tell me? You know, so, you know, the children question, and quite rightly they should. They have these amazingly curious, active, open minds, and I think it's for us to be able to create that atmosphere. And it's almost the same as an interfaith. You know, we have to create in an interfaith context a safe environment for questions, a safe environment where respect is shown to people, whatever their culture or their belief background. That there's a curiosity about the other that that you would create in an interfaith context. I don't think it's so different in your home, or with your friends, or in any social context. I think if you really want to explore children's spirituality, then join them in their journey. I think that is just so important. I've got so many other little bits and pieces here, but one of the things that I just wanted to end with, and it's only a tiny little thing, and it lasts for 2 minutes, is that I think children learn, as Francis explored early on, through creativity, whether it's singing, poetry, dance, and visits to places, getting out in nature, all of that kind of thing. So I find in our Baha'i children's classes that, for example, singing songs or having a song that is inclusive of everyone is a lovely way of engaging children. So it's drawing, painting, just anything that's artistic and creative engages the imagination. Storytelling is so powerful. Tell stories, find stories that are really beautiful and engaging for children. So I'm going to share a song now. I looked through the internet for all kinds of songs. There's lots of kiddie ones where it's clapping and happy, but I thought let's share one maybe for slightly older children and one that you might also really enjoy. So I'm going to end with that, and I hope there's enough to generate at least a few questions. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how all of you engage children so that Francis and I can learn and engage.
Would you add something, or
This is the final thing I want to say, and I
yeah,
think it's
please
really
do.
inherent in all the different faith traditions. Is that joint activities for children, children's classes we call them, but churches call them Sunday school, mosques call them madrasas. That bringing children together for collective learning and for building relationships within their own faith tradition is also really, really, really important. I think it gives them a sense of identity, a sense of companionship, and a sense of a place to explore who they are and what they are. I mean, if you're not part of a religious tradition, then creating community, finding a way to really have a community around you where young people get a chance to have intergenerational engagement, engaging with children of different ages, all of that, I think, is kind of also, to me, a big part also of that intercultural, interfaith experience of community. However you envisage community, from whatever tradition or even non-tradition that you're part of, expose them to the world. I think that's probably enough for me.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you both. I would just like to add that it was both talks. It was for me. I gained a lot of insights. I really loved the practical insights that Francis shared before, with all those examples and sharing the work that they do with the Interfaith Scotland, and also your personal experience, Maureen. I think it also adds a lot of. I felt represented as well while you were sharing your story, because I also grew up in a community where I did not have a lot of exposure. I didn't even know about other faith and cultural traditions. So I think we all understood that it's really important to normalize difference, to stay curious, and to create a very safe environment for the children and the youth to, well, inquire and explore. So now we come the time that is everyone has the chance to speak, ask questions, or maybe you want to share some of your experience or make a comment how what the speaker shared resonates maybe with you, or why something that you do with the children and youth that you have contact with. Or yeah, please do share or ask the speaker some questions.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's
Hi.
Pamela. Hi, I'm from West Lothian in Scotland. So it's lovely to be on this call tonight. My role is training practitioners, managers, and leaders in early years. And I came on the call because I find that practitioners sometimes tokenistically, embrace curriculum projects, and we're needing to really help those practitioners understand a little bit more about faith, cultures, religions. And I think some practitioners and some leaders and managers are frightened to embrace that subject. So I'm trying to find ways that I can help support them. And this call has been really helpful for that. And I will be looking up your resources and things. And Francis and Maureen, hearing your stories, hearing the information has been very invaluable for me this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you.
Yeah.
Frances also did a really super, it depends what age group of children, you're talking of early learning, but she did a super resource called Ask Me Anything, which is for teenage children. So if there's anyone that's interested in just the Ask Me Anything kind of series, that's on our YouTube channel as well. But thank you. You probably know of experiential play then, Pamela, and the work that they do.
Yeah.
Please feel free to also share on the chat if you don't feel comfortable with the video because we're being recorded, but we are checking the chat regularly.
May I go next, Hume? Thank you so much for both of the presentations, Maureen and Jason. And it was amazing to hear that there are like-minded people that with some experience understood while growing that is really important to be open-minded. Because from my situation, which is my background is from a minority. I live in Greece, and whenever I introduced myself to even to Greek people, while I was still in Greece, they just came up with assumption that I should be an Orthodox Christian because I live in Greece, but actually I am Muslim and my name is Eda because I'm from Turkish minority living in Greece. So that is okay. People learn on daily basis new things, but I guess open-mindedness, that's the word, is really important, and being open to hear differences which happens to other people, and break a little bit the stereotypes. I mean, that applies to everything. It applies to discrimination, but also into understanding, which is quite positive. So when we are open and turn to good listeners, actually that follows up with understanding the other as well and accepting that fact. While growing up, I had sometimes difficulties. People wouldn't believe me that I'm Muslim, and they would ask me why I'm not wearing a head coverage or pashmina, and I would say, well, I'm Muslim though, so I follow that religion's practices to find inner peace. But I don't occasionally wear head covering. That only happens when I'm practicing it. So these are just tiny examples how individuals can be quite stereotypic when it comes to religion and acceptance of different religions. That's what I wanted to share there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ida. And I think being, I mean, my children have now, as adults, spoken about how difficult it could sometimes be being the only Baha'i in the class or the only Baha'i in the school, even. And then when we moved to Samoa, the only white person in the class and the only non-Samoan in the class, and being different in some way. And as the world becomes more and more secular, perhaps their children who are brought up in religious environments will sometimes struggle with what it is to be different. And so also maybe exploring how to encourage your children to be okay that they're different, you know, because they may be different in all sorts of ways. It could, you know, and it might be, you know, their racial characteristics. It might be their color. I mean, my middle daughter's married to someone in the Caribbean, so one of my grandkids has got curly hair, and you know, she's different to the other kids in her class at Middlesbrough, you know. And so it's how do you get her to embrace that difference and not feel, and because kids can occasionally through sadly, and you may, you know, so it's dealing with bullying and so many things, isn't there, about how we encourage people to embrace difference.
And I also think that's a really good point, Ada, in terms of making assumptions. So in the resource that we're actually creating at the moment, will be coming out the next few months, we say at the start of it, so we, you know, because we're saying things like, you know, some Muslims wear a headscarf, etc., but it's also explaining that it's a huge diversity within every religion, and in terms of, you know, how strict your personal rules are, how you interpret your scriptures, whether you followed them all or if you're orthodox or liberal. So it's also creating that deeper understanding as well, so that we don't always just say these people do this and these people do that, which I guess can also be a danger if you're with very young children, because it's easier to say this is what this group of people believe, but it's also seeing us all as individuals. And that's why I like to start with spirituality, sort of saying here we are as human beings having this common experience of being human, and being spiritual is part of that. So it belongs to everybody, not just specific groups or cultures or beliefs.
Yes, sorry, my internet, if I lose you, please accept my apologies. I just, as a teacher who taught young children for over 22 years, and the older ones for over 10 years, but I was in a school where there was a lot of diversity. But we made sure that we had, you know, at the sort of primary 1 stage and at nursery stage, that the various playthings that they had were all from different cultures. The books that were read out as stories were from different faiths and cultures as well. So, for example, if they were playing with dolls, we made sure that there was a brown doll, a white doll, a black doll. If they were looking at utensils, you know, playing in the house corner, you made sure that you had a variety of utensils from different places. The books, the stories that were read, there were some from India, there were some from, you know, from China. So that becomes the norm for them. The difference becomes the norm, and they see that this is normal, that other people have other stories, they have other languages, and we used to even have books which were in different languages, you know, bilingual. So there are things that we can sort of put into young children at a very young age, so that they don't have those preconceived attitudes that they will pick up from society outside. So we need to start at the very young stage.
Thank you very much, Irvine. I think that was very very well put, that to normalize the difference. This is very important. Yeah. Is Cindy who raised the hands? Someone raised hands?
I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Francis, for a lovely presentation, particularly the lovely video. I have brought up my child, exposing him to to my belief, and that later on I find out that that's the only thing he knows. So I would be really interested to see your material, how we approach the interfaith, because it, as Ravinda says, is really important that they get the full spectrum of the story, even with a focus on one's own faith, that it is important to know of other faiths as they grow up. And because we all belong to, if we belong to a faith community, you always have that focus. Can you share a bit on how it may be possible to still share the interfaith aspect of teaching young children when they are that young, and their parents may be wary that we may or may not want interfaith injected into their upbringing, or other people's spiel, things like that. Have you come across how to bridge that difficulty? That would be very useful for us. Thank you.
I mean, I suppose I can only talk from my own faith tradition, and that we, even within our Baha'i context, there are lots of books about respecting other religions. So the children grew up learning a little bit about each religious tradition, and being encouraged to really explore more. That was quite a big thing. But I can see why parents might feel fearful as well. And I think sometimes people, they don't reach out to learn about other religions because there's a fear that maybe that my child will turn their back on their own religion. And what we've learned in adults, certainly who engage in interfaith dialogue or interfaith encounter, is that it very often deepens their own faith tradition, because they've got the basics of their own tradition, and then they're engaging with others and they're going, oh, they do X, and I wonder if there's any of that in my scripture, and how do I feel about that? And it kind of really encourages a greater depth of understanding of your own tradition when you're kind of exploring other traditions. In children, it's probably a little bit more sort of delicate in a way, and quite often, we use language that children don't necessarily really understand, even about our own faith traditions. And so when you're trying to encourage them to look at other faith traditions as well, it could feel like a big mishmash to kids. And so I think it's really important the way that we express that. And I don't know if there's any perfect way to do it. I could tell you a funny story. Used to I always sang prayers for the children at night. And one time I was saying to my youngest son, oh, what would you like to pray about tonight? And he said, can you sing me that song about God and I going fishing? And I was thinking, there's nothing I can think of that's anything to do with fishing. God going fishing. And there's a Baha'i prayer that I used to sing, which is, God is sufficient unto me. That was that idea that God was sufficient. He's thinking all the time I'm singing this, he's got this image in his head of him off fishing with some godlike figure, I don't know what. So, I suppose taking our time to, I don't mean simplify in a kind of simplistic way, but to share things with children, or in a way that is easily understandable for them and doesn't. I'm sure there'll be others on the screen that will have better answers than that. But I just think we have to find a way to do it, and it's new. The other used to be the other side of the world. The other is now living next door, isn't it? And it's more and more. This is the world we inhabit. So we're all on this journey together of learning how to navigate it. So I'd like to open it up to anybody on the screen who's got some thoughts on that, because I think it's a great question.
Thank you. That's yeah. It really is that openness, I think, in both adults and children, and being the carer or the caregiver. If we can encourage that, it does make us grow a bit more in our own faith too. Thank you for that.
Thank you. We do have one question in the chat from Thijs. So I don't know whether Francis or Maureen or both, if you want to answer. So it's should it be mandatory for schools to have a role in nurturing interfaith, intercultural understanding?
Good question. I mean, it is mandatory to have religious and moral education right the way through school, and I think it can be varied in how it is taught. Some will talk about lots of different religions, and some will focus on a couple. Whether or not they do it in such a way to show the commonalities and the common values and how important it is between them, like more kind of comparative religions, if you like. but there is definitely a part of the curriculum to at least hopefully create that kind of understanding through learning about each other. But going back to the program that we do, the Faces of Faith program, in terms of introducing people to different faiths through meeting people in positive personal encounters. I know everyone can't do that, but I think that's been a great way to add into the curriculum as well. I think I see Felix has got his hand up. I don't know if we've got time for one more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
I'm
Yeah.
just raising a hand to share one of my experience. I mean, as a personal experience, because when Mary was sharing about like, what if everything is not true? So I also asked myself the same questions when I was young, because like I live up in my country. So my country is in Myanmar. Most of them, they are like Buddhists. But I also suddenly I came across with the other friends, in Christians and also in Muslims and also in Hindu. So sometimes I also think about like, what if it is not like true? I think every children at some point will have like every questions in their life that ask themselves, or maybe ask the others. So what I asked to my parents, they couldn't answer it, because definitely they were also like coming from Buddhism, and they have limited exposure to come across with different cultures and religions. But over time, as I grew up, I began to understand that it is not important to know whether it is true or not, but what is important is also to share a different point of views and share a common ground between these cultures and also the diverse people. So I'm not sure if you know about my country. So back in like around years ago, they started opening up for these the political advancements, and also many like foreign people arrive in our country, and that's when you finally understand that there are so many differences in your world, that you can finally see it, and that's when you get feel ready to engage with people. And I've only think about like, if I have been only trapped in this society for a long time, I will never be engaged with like I will never be able to engage with different peoples. So I think that's one thing as a reflection from me for myself. Like it's more important to to be able to connect than like finding out whether it's like real or not. I think that's one thing I learned from myself. Yeah.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your own experience. So just to finalize, thank you again, the speakers, for all the insights, the experience. I think everybody learned a lot. I learned a lot. And also for the participants, for the questions and comments. I hope to see you again in our next event. So if you can follow us on social media, because we are organizing more webinars like this. Thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy your evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Veen, for your moderation.
you.
That was lovely for moderating.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.